The Persistence drifted in the vast emptiness of space, its once proud hull now marked with patches and dents. In the grand docking bay of Galactic Alliance Station Alpha, it looked small and weak next to the mighty warships that surrounded it. The light cruiser had served for over 50 years, ancient by Alliance standards, and everyone knew it was just waiting to be scrapped. Captain Thomas Reed stood tall as he led his team through the crowded station. His weathered face showed the marks of Earth's recent space battles, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Behind him walked his hand-picked crew. Jane Wilson with her toolbox swinging at her side, Marcus Hill with his military posture, Lisa Cooper scanning everything with curious eyes, and Alan Green lost in thought as always. "That can't be our ship," Marcus whispered as they approached the viewing window. The Persistence hung in space like a forgotten toy, its paint faded and peeling. "It is," Thomas replied simply. He had expected this. When Earth joined the Galactic Alliance 3 months ago, humans were still seen as newcomers, untested and unproven. Giving them the worst ship in the fleet was both a test and an insult. A blue-skinned alien with 4 arms approached them. His uniform bore the marks of an Alliance liaison officer. "I am Krell," he announced without offering a greeting gesture. "I will be supervising your assignment." The way he said the last word made it clear what he thought of humans commanding any Alliance vessel. "Captain Reed," Thomas introduced himself with a firm nod. "We're ready to inspect our ship." Krell made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Inspect? The Persistence has already been inspected. It meets minimum Alliance safety standards." "Barely." The shuttle ride to the Persistence was silent and tense. When they docked and the airlock hissed open, the smell hit them first, stale air mixed with the scent of old metal and leaked fluids. "Welcome to your new home," Krell said, stepping through the airlock. "Admiral Vorsten sends his regards. Your orders are simple. Patrol the outer rim sectors 18 through 22. Report any unusual activity. Stay out of trouble." Thomas nodded. The outer rim was the emptiest, quietest region of Alliance space, perfect for keeping an embarrassing ship far from important eyes. "I'll show you to the bridge," Krell continued. "Try not to touch anything until the official handover is complete." The corridors of the Persistence were narrow and dim. Exposed wires hung from ceiling panels. The floor plates rattled under their boots. "This is worse than I expected," Lisa whispered to Alan. "It's perfect," Alan replied with a small smile. The bridge was small compared to Earth vessels of similar size. 5 worn control stations formed a half-circle around a central command chair. The view screen flickered with static every few seconds. "Your quarters are on Deck 3, Krell said. "The previous crew left in something of a hurry. You may find some of their personal items still aboard." "When was this ship last in combat?" Marcus asked, running his hand over a weapons console. "The Persistence hasn't seen combat in 15 years, Krell replied. "It was deemed unsuitable." After Krell left them to get acquainted with their new command, the 5 humans stood in a circle on the bridge. "Well, Captain," Jane asked, "what's the plan?" Thomas looked around the bridge, taking in every broken panel and flickering light. Then he smiled. "The plan is Project Phoenix, just like we discussed." The others nodded. They had been preparing for this since learning of their assignment. "They think they're punishing us," Thomas continued. "The weakest ship for the newest species, but they don't understand humans very well. They don't understand what we can do with scraps," Jane added, already examining a control panel she had partially disassembled. "Engine room first," Thomas decided. "Jane, I want a complete assessment by 800 tomorrow. Marcus, weapons inventory. Lisa, communication systems. Alan, ship's computer and sensors. I'll review the ship's history and previous mission logs." The next day, they gathered again on the bridge. Their faces were smudged with grease and dirt, but their eyes shone with excitement. "It's worse than we thought," Jane reported first. "The main engines are running at 60% efficiency at best. The power core needs a complete overhaul. Weapons are a joke, Marcus added. Standard Alliance beam weapons, but the targeting systems are from 3 generations ago. Half the torpedo tubes are sealed shut from lack of maintenance. Communications work, Lisa said, but only at short range. The long-range arrays need new receivers. And the computer core is handling so many patches and workarounds that it's using 40% of its processing power just to maintain basic functions. Alan finished. Thomas nodded, taking it all in. Then he looked at each of them. Then we have our work cut out for us. The official handover ceremony is tomorrow. After that, we have 3 weeks before our first patrol begins. That's not enough time, Marcus argued. It's enough to start, Thomas replied. Jane, I want those engines running at 80% minimum before we leave dock. I'll need parts we don't have, she said. Then get creative. This is what we trained for. The handover ceremony the next day was brief and cold. Admiral Vorston appeared via hologram, his large, ridge-covered face filling the view screen. The Alliance welcomes humanity's contribution to our fleet, he said without warmth. May the Persistence serve as a suitable introduction to our standards and protocols. His emphasis made the insult clear. After the Admiral's image faded, Krell presented Thomas with an official data chip. Your command codes and clearances, he explained. Limited to level 3 access, of course. Of course, Thomas replied calmly. I will remain aboard as your liaison and observer during your first patrol cycle, Krell added. Standard procedure for new member species. We look forward to working with you, Thomas said, keeping his face neutral. As soon as Krell left the bridge, Jane turned to Thomas. He's here to spy on us. Naturally, Thomas agreed. That's why we'll keep our most important modifications hidden until we're underway. Over the next 3 weeks, the human crew worked in shifts around the clock. They requisitioned what parts they could, salvaged others from storage, and fabricated the rest. Jane spent most of her time deep in the engine room, emerging only for brief meals before disappearing again. When Krell inquired about their activities, Thomas explained they were simply bringing the ship up to Earth standards of safety. The liaison seemed satisfied with this explanation, especially since the humans requested no special equipment or materials. The night before their departure, Thomas found Jane in the engine room, surrounded by disassembled components. Will it work? He asked quietly. She looked up, her face streaked with grease, but her eyes bright with accomplishment. They gave us a floating coffin, she said, patting the newly modified power core. But we're turning it into something they've never seen before. She pointed to the schematics on her tablet. I've reconfigured the matter-antimatter injectors based on Earth's quantum compression theories. The Alliance engineers would never try this. They'd call it too unstable. And is it? Thomas asked. Jane grinned. Only if you don't know what you're doing. As the Persistence prepared to leave dock the next morning, Krell observed the human crew with obvious skepticism. Your patrol route has been programmed into the navigation computer, he said. Try not to get lost. Thomas settled into the command chair, feeling it adjust to his form. Crew status. Engineering ready, Jane reported from her station. Weapons, such as they are, ready, Marcus added with a slight smile. Communications online, Lisa confirmed. Navigation and sensors functioning, Alan said. Thomas nodded and looked ahead at the view screen, which now displayed a clear view of open space. Release docking clamps. Thrusters at 1/4. Take us out, nice and easy. As the Persistence pulled away from the station, Thomas allowed himself a small smile. The Alliance had given them their weakest ship as an insult. They would soon discover that was their first mistake. 1 week into their patrol mission, the Persistence cruised slowly through the empty regions of Sector 19. On the bridge, Krell watched with growing curiosity as the human crew worked in perfect harmony, despite the ship's obvious flaws. Your engines are running 5% above the efficiency levels in the ship's records, Krell noted, studying the display. How is that possible without an Alliance dock overhaul? Captain Reed glanced at Jane, who merely shrugged. Basic maintenance, Jane said. Sometimes all an old machine needs is a little care. Krell didn't look convinced, but he said nothing more. As the liaison officer left the bridge, Thomas turned to his engineer. How much have you actually improved them? Jane grinned. 15% so far. But I told the ship's computer to report only small improvements. No need to make our friends suspicious yet. Thomas nodded with approval. Good thinking. How long until the real work can begin? Tonight, Jane replied. Alan has figured out how to loop the ship's internal sensors. Krell won't see what we're doing in the lower decks. When the night cycle began, the real work started. While Krell slept in his quarters, the human crew gathered in Cargo Bay 3, the farthest room from the liaison's quarters. Status reports, Thomas said quietly. Jane went first. I've prepared the engine modifications. We'll need at least 3 hours of complete engine shutdown to install them. Too risky, Thomas replied. Krell would notice immediately. Not if we do it during the weekly maintenance cycle, Marcus suggested. We're scheduled to power down for 2 hours next cycle. We could extend it by claiming we found an issue. Thomas nodded. Good. What about weapons? Marcus displayed a schematic on his tablet. Alliance weapon systems are designed for specific tasks. Point defense arrays for small targets, main cannons for large ships, and so on. But I've been redesigning them to be adaptable. Adaptable how? Lisa asked. On Earth, we learned to make weapons that can change their function based on the target, Marcus explained. The Alliance never developed this because they prefer specialized ships working together. But since we're alone out here, we need to be able to handle anything. Thomas finished. Excellent. Lisa, communications are interesting, she said. The Alliance uses standard transmission protocols, but their actual code structure is inefficient. I've been rewriting the base code to use Earth's compression algorithms. We'll be able to send 10 times more data in the same transmission window and detect signals that Alliance ships would miss. Alan added. I've been helping Lisa with the sensor arrays. They're designed to look for specific energy signatures, but we're modifying them to detect patterns instead. Thomas looked at each of them with pride. This is exactly why Earth chose each of you for this mission. You're not just experts, you're innovators. Over the next 2 weeks, the human crew worked tirelessly to transform their ship without alerting Krell. The maintenance cycle provided their first big opportunity. When the engines powered down, Jane and her team immediately began installing the new quantum compression injectors. We need more time, Jane reported over her communicator. They were already 30 minutes past the scheduled restart. On the bridge, Thomas looked at Krell, who was growing impatient. Is there a problem, Captain? The liaison asked. Jane reports a fluctuation in the antimatter containment field. Thomas lied smoothly. Standard procedure is to check the entire system before restart. Krell's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. I should inspect this myself. By all means, Thomas offered, knowing Jane was prepared for this possibility. Engineering is all yours. When Krell arrived in engineering, Jane showed him a diagnostic screen with carefully prepared false readings. See these fluctuations? She pointed to a wavy line. If we restart with these readings, we risk a containment breach. Krell studied the screen, then the surrounding equipment. His eyes narrowed. This section looks different than standard Alliance configuration. Jane nodded calmly. We rerouted some power conduits to improve efficiency. It's within Alliance safety protocols, she added quickly. Krell seemed unconvinced but unable to identify exactly what was wrong. Finally, he agreed to allow the additional maintenance time. An hour later, the engines came back online. The ship's power levels immediately jumped, more than Jane had expected. Power output at 127% of baseline, Alan reported from the bridge. That's significant. Krell stared at the readings. Impossible. These engines cannot exceed 110% without a complete overhaul. Must be a sensor malfunction, Thomas suggested. Alan, recalibrate the power sensors. Alan pretended to make adjustments. Better now, sir. Reading 108% power. Krell seemed satisfied with this explanation, but later that night, he confronted Thomas in his ready room. Your crew is making unauthorized modifications to an Alliance vessel, Krell stated flatly. This is a violation of Protocol 87C. Thomas didn't deny it. We're making improvements, not violations. The ship still operates within Alliance safety parameters. That is not your decision to make, Krell insisted. I must report this to Admiral Forston immediately. Thomas leaned forward. Before you do that, let me show you something. He led Krell to the sensor lab, where Alan had been working on his own modifications. Alan brought up a display showing a star system they had passed yesterday. This is what the Alliance sensors recorded, Alan explained, showing a basic star map with a few planets. Then he switched to a second display. And this is what our modified sensors detected. The second display showed the same system but with significantly more detail, asteroid fields, small moons, and strange energy patterns near the third planet. What is that? Krell asked, pointing to the energy pattern. We don't know yet, Alan admitted, but the Alliance sensors missed it completely. If it's something dangerous. Krell's face showed conflict. As much as he disapproved of the humans' methods, he couldn't ignore a potential security threat. 1 week, he finally said. I will give you 1 week to prove your modifications have value. If they do not, I will report everything to the Admiral. After Krell left, Thomas gathered his crew in the mess hall. We have 1 week to convince him, he announced. Jane, I need the engines fully upgraded by then. Marcus, weapons systems too. Lisa and Alan, perfect those sensors. We need to show him something that will change his mind. Or we could just lock him in his quarters, Marcus suggested with a half-smile. Thomas shook his head. We're not here to make enemies. We're here to prove what humans can offer the Alliance. For the next week, the crew worked openly on their modifications, explaining each change to a surprisingly interested Krell. The liaison asked detailed questions and even offered suggestions based on his knowledge of Alliance technology. On the 7th day, Jane called everyone to engineering. The engine room looked completely different now. Where there had once been exposed wires and leaking pipes, there were now sleek, humming systems with pulsing blue lights. It's ready, she announced. Full quantum compression drive, based on Earth's theoretical designs. Never successfully built until now. What will it do? Krell asked. Jane smiled. It will give us 3 times the speed and twice the range of any Alliance vessel of similar size. And it's just the beginning. That night, Captain Reed found Krell on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Have you decided? Thomas asked. Krell turned to face him. What you're doing is impossible, he admitted. Our engineers have tried for centuries to solve some of these problems. Maybe you've been thinking about them wrong, Thomas suggested. Humans excel at the impossible because we refuse to accept limitations. Krell was quiet for a long moment. I will not report your modifications, he finally said, on one condition. Name it. Teach me, Krell said, his voice softer than Thomas had ever heard it. I want to understand how you think, how you see problems differently. Thomas smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Krell reached out one of his 4 hands to complete the handshake. The Persistence continued its patrol, but it was no longer the same ship that had left dock. System by system, it was becoming something new, something the Alliance had never seen before. And this was only the beginning. 3 months into their patrol mission, the Persistence had changed dramatically. The once dying ship now hummed with power. Its engines purred like a well-fed cat. The weapons systems, though still limited by their original hardware, now responded with twice their previous speed. and the sensors could detect things no Alliance ship was designed to see. Krell had become an unexpected ally. He spent hours with each crew member, learning their methods and sharing his knowledge of Alliance systems. Today, he stood beside Marcus at the weapons console, watching him adjust targeting parameters. "Your approach defies Alliance military doctrine," Krell observed. "We build separate systems for separate functions. You combine them." Marcus nodded. "On Earth, we learned that specialized systems fail when faced with unexpected situations. Adaptable systems survive." The ship's comm system suddenly blared with an urgent signal. "Captain to the bridge," Lisa's voice called out. Thomas arrived within minutes, followed by Krell and Marcus. Jane and Alan were already there with Lisa, all staring at the main view screen. "What is it?" Thomas asked. "Emergency distress call," Lisa reported. "From Research Station Epsilon. It's near the border of Vorax space." Thomas tensed. Everyone in the Alliance knew about the Vorax, a hostile species that had waged war against the Alliance for generations. Their current peace was fragile at best. "Play the message," he ordered. A distorted voice filled the bridge, broken by static. "Under attack. Unknown vessels. Shields failing. Request immediate assistance. Survivors in the central core." "When did this come in?" Thomas asked. "Just now," Lisa replied. "But the timestamp shows it was sent 6 hours ago." 6 hours? Krell's 4 eyes widened. "No Alliance communication should take that long to reach us." "It didn't come through normal channels," Lisa explained. "It was hidden inside a burst of radiation. Our modified sensors detected the pattern. Standard Alliance ships would have missed it completely." Thomas turned to Krell. "How far are we from Station Epsilon?" Krell checked the navigation console. "At maximum speed, 12 hours. Jane, can we push the engines harder?" Thomas asked. The engineer nodded. "The quantum compression drive is ready for its first full test. We could make it in 6 hours. Are there any other Alliance ships closer?" Thomas asked Krell. The liaison checked the fleet deployment charts. "The cruiser Dauntless and 2 destroyers are responding from Starbase 12. Estimated arrival, 10 hours. Thomas made his decision. "Set course for Station Epsilon. Maximum speed. Alert medical to prepare for casualties." As the Persistence changed course, Krell moved closer to Thomas. "Captain, I must advise caution. If the Vorax are involved, one small ship cannot." "We're not going to engage," Thomas interrupted. "We're going to rescue survivors. We'll be in and out before the Vorax know we're there." "Alliance protocol would dictate waiting for reinforcements," Krell noted. Thomas met his gaze steadily. "Human protocol dictates rescue. We don't leave people behind." 6 hours later, the Persistence dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Station Epsilon. The research station hung in space like a broken toy. Half of its massive ring structure was simply gone, torn away by weapons fire. The central core, where the laboratories and living quarters were located, still showed some lights, but many sections were dark. "Life signs?" Thomas asked. Alan studied his sensor readings. "Confirmed. 43 life forms in the central core, but they're fading. Atmosphere is leaking." "Vorax ships?" Marcus asked, scanning the area. 3 vessels, Alan reported, in orbit around the station's far side. Thomas turned to his crew. "We have one chance at this. The Persistence wasn't built for combat, even with our modifications. The Vorax will detect us as soon as we move closer," Krell warned. Lisa looked up from her console. "Maybe not. Our new sensors gave me an idea. We can mask our energy signature to look like background radiation. It won't fool them for long, but it might get us close enough." Thomas nodded. "Do it. Marcus, be ready with defensive systems only. Jane, keep the engines hot. We'll need to leave fast." The Persistence moved silently toward the damaged station, its energy signature disguised. When they were within 1,000 kilometers, Alan reported a change. "The Vorax ships are moving. They've detected something." How long until they identify us? Thomas asked. 2 minutes, maybe 3, Alan replied. Not enough time for standard docking, Krell said. Thomas turned to Jane. Options. The engineer thought for a moment. We could use the emergency transport system. It's not meant for this many people, but I've upgraded the buffers. Will it work through the station's shields? Thomas asked. What shields? Jane replied grimly. Those are offline, but the radiation levels are high. It'll be risky. Thomas made the call. Prepare emergency transport. Marcus, Lisa, Alan, you're with me. Krell, you have the bridge. I should accompany you, Krell insisted. No, Thomas said firmly. If something happens to us, you need to get this ship and any survivors we transport back to Alliance space. In the transporter room, the away team prepared quickly. Marcus distributed weapons, while Lisa calibrated communication devices to work in the high radiation environment. Vorax ships changing course, Krell reported over the comm. They've spotted us. Transport now, Thomas ordered. The team materialized in a dark corridor. Emergency lighting cast red shadows over twisted metal and floating debris. The air was thin, and warning sirens wailed in the distance. This way, Alan said, following his handheld sensor. Life signs are strongest in the central laboratory. They moved quickly through the damaged station, helping injured researchers along the way. Most were too weak to walk, suffering from radiation exposure and injuries. In the main laboratory, they found the remaining survivors huddled around the last functioning life support system. A tall, gray-skinned researcher approached them. Alliance rescue? He asked weakly. Yes, Thomas confirmed. We're transporting everyone out. The Vorax could return any minute. As they organized the survivors for transport, the station shook violently. What was that? Marcus asked. Lisa checked her communicator. The Persistence is under attack. 2 Vorax ships are firing on it. Krell, Thomas called over his comm. Status report. The Vorax have engaged, Krell replied, his voice steady despite the crisis. I'm implementing evasive maneuvers, but our shields cannot withstand direct hits for long. We need 5 more minutes to evacuate everyone, Thomas told him. You have 3, Krell replied. After that, I cannot guarantee this ship will still be here. The away team worked frantically, grouping survivors for emergency transport. As the last group prepared to leave, the station rocked again, harder this time. Direct hit on the station's core, Alan reported. Structural integrity failing. Everyone out now, Thomas ordered. Marcus was helping the last survivor, an injured researcher who couldn't stand, when part of the ceiling collapsed. Without hesitation, Marcus pushed the researcher clear but was struck by falling debris. Marcus, Lisa cried out. Thomas rushed to his weapons officer, who lay pinned under a metal beam. Blood flowed from a gash on his head. Go, Marcus said weakly. Get them out. Not happening, Thomas replied. Together with Alan, he lifted the beam enough for Lisa to pull Marcus free. Transport lock engage, came Jane's voice over the comm. Stand by. As the station began to break apart around them, the rescue team and the last survivors dematerialized in a shimmer of light. Back on the Persistence, the medical team rushed to treat the survivors and the injured Marcus. On the bridge, Thomas found Krell expertly maneuvering the ship away from the Vorax attackers. The 3rd Vorax vessel is moving to intercept, Ellen reported. We can't outrun all 3, Jane said from engineering. Thomas looked at the tactical display. Then he turned to Krell. Remember those modifications we weren't sure would work? It's time to find out. Krell nodded in understanding. The Alliance would never approve. The Alliance isn't here, Thomas replied. We are. Activate the shield harmonics, Thomas ordered as the Persistence shuddered from another Vorax hit. Jane, we need that power modulation now. In engineering, Jane worked frantically at her console. Ready in 5 seconds. The three Vorax ships closed in, their sleek, predatory forms visible on the view screen. Their weapons charged for another volley. Harmony sequence engaged, Jane reported. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily, then brightened as a new energy pattern flowed through the ship. On the weapons console, Marcus's modified systems came to life. Harmony shields at full power, Alan confirmed. The lead Vorax ship fired. A bright energy beam struck the Persistence, but instead of exploding against the shields, the energy seemed to flow around the ship like water. "It's working," Lisa exclaimed. "Shields absorbing 87% of incoming energy," Alan reported, his voice filled with surprise. "The modified emitters are redirecting the rest." Thomas turned to Krell, who stared at the readings with wide eyes. "This is impossible," Krell whispered. "Shield technology cannot absorb energy like this. It can when you tune the shield harmonics to match the frequency of the incoming weapons," Jane explained over the comm. "The Alliance never tried because your shield doctrine is about deflection, not absorption." Another Vorax blast hit them, stronger than before. "They're adjusting their weapons," Marcus warned from his medical bed. He had insisted on being moved to the bridge, where he lay on a portable cot with medical monitors attached to his chest. His head was bandaged, but his eyes were alert. "Jane, can we use the absorbed energy?" Thomas asked. "Channeling to engines now," she replied. "We'll have a burst of speed in 30 seconds." Thomas studied the tactical display. "We need a clear path. Krell, on my mark. Take us between the lid ship and its wingman." Krell nodded, his four hands moving with precision over the navigation controls. "Now," Thomas ordered. The Persistence surged forward, suddenly accelerating to speeds no Alliance ship of its size could achieve. It slipped between two Vorax vessels before they could react. "Clear path to warp speed," Krell announced. "Get us out of here," Thomas ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the Persistence jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Vorax ships behind. In the sudden quiet of the bridge, the crew exchanged looks of relief and amazement. "We did it," Lisa said softly. "The survivors?" Thomas asked. "Medical reports all 43 are alive," Alan replied. "Some critical, but stable." Thomas turned to Marcus. "That was too close. Your Harmony shields saved us all." "Jane's engine modifications gave us the speed," Marcus replied. "And Krell's flying got us clear." Krell seemed surprised at the acknowledgement. "I merely followed the captain's orders." "You're part of this crew now," Thomas told him, official observer or not. Before Krell could respond, the comm system activated. The stern face of Admiral Turkin appeared on the view screen. "Captain Reed," the Admiral's deep voice filled the bridge. "The Dauntless reports you've rescued the Station Epsilon survivors. Explain your actions." Thomas straightened in his chair. "We received their distress call and responded, Admiral." "You were ordered to patrol sectors 18 through 22, the Admiral reminded him. "Station Epsilon is in Sector 25. "Yes, sir. We detected their emergency signal when no other ships could and determined immediate action was necessary." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "The Persistence is not equipped for rescue operations, especially in Vorax territory. You risked provoking an incident." "With respect, Admiral," Thomas countered. "We saved 43 lives. The station was already under attack when we arrived." "Rendezvous with the Dauntless at coordinates 557 Mark 89, the Admiral ordered. "Transfer the survivors and prepare for inspection." After the Admiral's image faded, Krell turned to Thomas. He did not sound pleased. "No," Thomas agreed, "but we did the right thing." 12 hours later, the Persistence docked alongside the massive cruiser Dauntless. Medical teams transferred the survivors, while Thomas and Krell boarded the larger ship to meet with Admiral Turkin. The Admiral's ready room was spacious and austere. He sat behind a large desk, studying a datapad. 17, he said without looking up. "Sir," Thomas asked. You've violated 17 Alliance protocols with your modifications, Admiral Turkin stated coldly. He set down the pad and finally looked at Thomas. Then, unexpectedly, he added, and saved 43 lives that would have been lost had you followed them. Thomas remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. The lead researcher from Station Epsilon has requested to speak with you, the Admiral continued. He's waiting in the conference room. In the dauntless conference room, the gray-skinned researcher from the station stood waiting. He looked much better than during the rescue, though still weak. Captain Reed, he greeted Thomas. I am Dr. Vren, Chief Scientist of Project Horizon. Doctor, Thomas nodded. I'm glad to see you recovering. Thanks to you and your crew, Vren replied. But I fear your timely rescue may only delay a greater disaster. Vren activated a holographic display showing the strange device. This is what we were researching at Station Epsilon, he explained. A Vorax prototype weapon we recovered from a derelict scout ship. The hologram zoomed in, revealing complex internal mechanisms. We discovered its purpose just before the attack. Vren continued. It's designed to collapse subspace. Admiral Turkin, who had entered silently, stepped forward. Collapse subspace. Are you certain? Completely, Vren confirmed. If deployed, these weapons could render vast regions of space impassable. Planets would be cut off from each other. The Alliance would be fragmented. The Vorax attacked to recover the prototype, Thomas realized. Yes, Vren nodded. But our data indicates they have already built more. We detected energy signatures consistent with these weapons at 3 locations deep in Vorax space. The Admiral's face darkened. How long before they can deploy them? Weeks, Vren replied. Perhaps days. Admiral Turkin turned away, his posture rigid. I must alert High Command immediately. Captain Reed, Officer Krell, remain here. After the Admiral left, Vren studied Thomas with curious eyes. I've heard about your ship, the scientist said. How you've modified it beyond Alliance specifications. Word travels fast, Thomas remarked. Among scientists, yes, Vren smiled slightly. Is it true your shields can absorb energy rather than deflect it? Thomas glanced at Krell, who nodded slightly. Yes, Thomas confirmed, along with other modifications. Vren leaned closer. Then you may be our only hope. 2 hours later, Thomas found himself in a heated debate with Admiral Turkin and the captains of 6 other Alliance vessels. High Command has ordered all ships to defensive positions around core Alliance worlds, the Admiral announced. We will establish a containment perimeter, leaving the outer colonies undefended, Thomas pointed out. We cannot protect everything, Captain Lorith of the Dauntless argued. Strategic withdrawal is our only option until we develop countermeasures. That could take years, Thomas countered. By then, the Vorax will have cut off half the Alliance. What do you propose instead? Admiral Turkin asked, his tone making clear he expected no reasonable answer. Thomas activated the holographic display, showing a map of Vorax space. A counteroffensive, he said simply. Target the weapon facilities before they can deploy. The room erupted in protests. Impossible. Suicide mission. The Vorax fleet would destroy any approaching force. Admiral Turkin raised a hand for silence. One ship against the Vorax fleet. Even with your modifications, it would be suicide. Thomas displayed a simulation based on Alan's calculations. The Persistence isn't just modified, it's evolved. And it's the only ship in the fleet the Vorax won't recognize. We can slip past their defenses, reach the weapon facilities, and neutralize them. The room fell silent as the simulation played out, showing the Persistence evading Vorax detection systems. This is based on what? Captain Lorith asked skeptically. Our encounter with the Vorax ships, Thomas explained. We analyzed their sensor patterns, weapon frequencies, and shield harmonics. The Persistence can be tuned to slip through their detection grid. Krell stepped forward. I have witnessed these humans' capabilities firsthand, Admiral. What seems impossible to us is methodology to them. Admiral Turkin studied the simulation again. And if you're detected? Thomas met his gaze steadily. Then we fail, and your defensive strategy proceeds as planned. You lose nothing by letting us try. Later, in his temporary quarters aboard the Dauntless, Thomas received a message from the Admiral. Permission granted. Limited resources will be provided. Success unlikely but attempt authorized. When Thomas returned to the Persistence, he found his crew waiting on the bridge. Well? Jane asked. We're going in, Thomas announced. One ship against the Vorax. Instead of fear, he saw determination in their eyes. What exactly have we turned this ship into? Krell asked, now more curious than condemning. Something the Alliance would never build, Jane answered with a slight smile. A Requiem. Thomas looked around at his crew, at Jane with her engineering genius, at Marcus still recovering but ready to fight, at Lisa with her steady confidence, at Alan with his brilliant mind, and at Krell, once an observer, but now truly one of them. The Persistence was supposed to be the weakest ship in the fleet, Thomas said. Instead, it's become our greatest hope. The Persistence moved silently through Vorax space, its energy signature disguised to mimic cosmic background radiation. On the bridge, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person aware of the stakes. 3 days had passed since they left Alliance territory. 3 days of careful navigation through sensor nets and patrol routes. 3 tense, dangerous days. Status? Thomas asked, his voice low despite the fact that no one could hear them in the vacuum of space. Still undetected, Lisa reported from communications. Their patrol ships have passed within 5,000 kilometers twice without changing course. Our modifications are working better than expected, Alan added from the science station. At this rate, we'll reach the primary weapon facility in 6 hours. Jane's voice came over the comm from engineering. Captain, I need you down here. There's something you should see. In engineering, Jane stood beside a holographic display of the ship's systems. The image rotated slowly, showing new connections and pathways that hadn't existed when they started their journey. What am I looking at? Thomas asked. Evolution, Jane replied. The quantum harmonics we installed are adapting. They're creating new pathways, new connections. Is it dangerous? Jane shook her head. Not dangerous, but unexpected. The ship is becoming more than the sum of its modifications. It's becoming something new. Can you control it? For now, Jane said. But I think, she hesitated. I think we need to let it happen. Thomas studied her face. You've been planning this. It wasn't a question, but Jane nodded anyway. Since we first received this assignment, I saw the potential in this old ship. The Alliance considered it obsolete, but that meant there were fewer restrictions, fewer safety protocols locking down its systems. What exactly will it become? Thomas asked. Jane met his eyes. A perfect weapon. One use, one purpose. A final requiem for our enemies. Thomas understood. And the cost? The ship, Jane said simply. Maybe more. Back on the bridge, Thomas found Krell studying sensor readings with Alan. The alien looked up as Thomas entered. We've detected the weapon facility, Krell reported. It's heavily defended. 12 Vorax warships and a planetary defense grid. Show me, Thomas ordered. The main view screen displayed an asteroid belt surrounding a small planetoid. The Vorax had built their facility inside the largest asteroid, using the others for camouflage and protection. Their defenses are too strong for a direct approach, Marcus observed from the weapons station. He had recovered enough to return to duty, though he still moved carefully. Even with our modifications, we can't fight through that. We won't have to, Thomas replied. Jane has been working on something. He turned to the rest of the crew. I need everyone in the conference room. Now. In the small conference room adjacent to the bridge, Thomas explained Jane's discovery and her plan. The faces around the table grew solemn as they understood what it would mean. It's a one-way mission, Lisa said quietly. Not necessarily, Jane countered. If we time it perfectly, we might be able to get to the escape pods before the final sequence completes. Might, Marcus repeated. The odds are low, Jane admitted. But the plan will work. The Vorax weapon will be neutralized, and their entire program disrupted. Krell had remained silent, his 4 eyes fixed on the table. Now he looked up. Now I understand, he said quietly. You never built this ship to return. Thomas didn't confirm or deny it. This is a volunteer mission. I won't order anyone to stay. The Dauntless is waiting at the rendezvous point. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttle. No one moved. We started this together, Marcus said. We finish it together. One by one, they nodded in agreement. Very well, Thomas said. Let's begin the final modifications. For the next 5 hours, the crew worked to prepare the ship. Jane led the process, reconfiguring systems and programming the final sequence. The Persistence would become more than just a delivery system. It would become the weapon itself. As they neared the facility, Thomas looked around the bridge at his crew, at the people who had become his family over these past months. They had taken the worst ship in the fleet and transformed it into something remarkable. And now, they would make the ultimate sacrifice. Approaching optimal position, Alan announced. Thomas nodded. Begin approach sequence. The Persistence moved forward, still cloaked from Vorax sensors. They glided through the asteroid belt, avoiding debris with precise maneuvers. They've detected something, Lisa suddenly reported. Not us specifically, but they're scanning this sector more intensively. Time to target, Thomas asked. 4 minutes, Krell replied from navigation. Maintain course, Thomas ordered. Jane, status. Final sequence ready, she reported from engineering. I set the triggers. Once we're in position, the process will be irreversible. The Persistence continued its approach, drawing closer to the massive asteroid that housed the Vorax weapon facility. They were less than 2 minutes away when everything changed. Multiple ships moving to intercept. Marcus called out. They'd spotted us. The view screen showed 3 Vorax vessels breaking formation, turning toward the Persistence with weapons charging. They're hailing us, Lisa reported, surprise in her voice. Open a channel, Thomas ordered. The image of a Vorax commander appeared on screen. The alien's reptilian features were set in a snarl. Alliance vessel, the commander hissed. You have entered Vorax space illegally. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Thomas looked at his crew, then back at the Vorax. I'm afraid we can't do that. He signaled Lisa to cut the transmission. They're locking weapons, Marcus reported. Jane, we need the final sequence now, Thomas ordered over the comm. We're not in optimal position, she protested. It's now or never, Thomas replied. Vorax ships firing, Marcus shouted. Energy beams struck the Persistence, but instead of causing damage, the modified shields absorbed the energy, glowing brighter with each hit. Final sequence initiated, Jane announced. The ship is resonating. The lights on the bridge changed from standard white to a deep, pulsing blue. The deck plates hummed beneath their feet as the ship's systems harmonized. What are you doing? The Vorax commander demanded, his transmission forcing its way onto their view screen. Thomas smiled slightly. The weakest ship in the fleet becomes its strongest weapon. The Vorax ships fired again, more desperately now. The Persistence absorbed every hit, growing stronger each time. 1 minute to completion, Jane reported. Escape pods are ready, but we need to launch now if we're going. Thomas looked around at his crew. No one moved toward the escape routes. The Alliance needs to know if this works, Thomas said. Krell, take the shuttle. Bring them the data. Krell shook his head, all 4 of his hands working steadily at his console. My place is here, Captain, with my crew. As the Persistence reached the weapon facility, Jane's voice came over the comm one last time. 30 seconds. The ship has reached harmony. The entire vessel now glowed with absorbed energy, every system perfectly aligned with the others. The Vorax ships continued to fire, not realizing they were only making the Persistence stronger. 10 seconds. Jane counted down. Thomas stood from his command chair. It's been an honor serving with all of you. 5 seconds. The crew joined Thomas, standing together as the ship prepared for its final purpose. The Persistence, Thomas said softly, a fitting name after all. The ship reached the heart of the Vorax facility and initiated its final sequence, the controlled subspace inversion, the very principle the Vorax weapon was based on, but refined and perfected by human ingenuity. In its final moments, the Persistence didn't just destroy the Vorax weapon. It created a subspace beacon that rendered their entire weapons program useless. The frequency of the beacon would disrupt the precise conditions needed for their technology to function. The light grew blinding, and then silence. 6 months later, Admiral Turkin stood before the newly constructed memorial at Alliance headquarters. The monument depicted not just the crew of the Persistence, but the ship itself. Beside the memorial stood a new class of vessels incorporating human design principles, named Phoenix Class. An aide approached the admiral. "Sir, the Vorax delegation has arrived for the peace talks." Turkin nodded. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." As the aide left, Turkin looked back at the memorial, reading the inscription. "They transformed our weakest ship into our greatest triumph." The admiral touched the cold stone. "No," he said quietly, echoing words reported from the Persistence's final transmission. "They transformed our thinking. The ship was just the beginning." The Phoenix-class vessel in the dock powered up its engines, the blue glow of its quantum harmonics casting light across the memorial. The weakest ship had become the strongest example, and the legacy of the Persistence would guide the Alliance into a new era. The end.